So we're going to go ahead and look at servicing a old style Bernina 830 machine. This is a really common machine that was manufactured by Bernina for about 15 years, and there's millions of them in the marketplace. They made several million of these machines over that period of time. So it's very common to see this machine. So we're going to go ahead and run through this as one of the basic machines, and we're also going to look at tension balancing and how to do some tension balancing with this machine. Note that this is coming in a case, and normally when a machine comes in a case, we also want to make sure as part of our cleaning regimen we clean the case as well, and not just the machine when it goes out, so they get back a very clean case that looks really good too. We're also going to blow out the inside of the case and clean it with some air, just as a quick precaution, or just as a quick measure to go ahead and clean it for the customer. So this comes right out, and then we're going to go ahead attach our air gun. Remember, we want to think about customer experience and what they're going to see when they get back their case. So we're going to clean this at the end of the service procedure and polish it, make it look nice, and make that red really pop for them. All right. So we just got this machine up. We want to look at our estimation form first and see if there's anything out of the ordinary. This particular machine is just in for service, but there's some very key things we can check right away on a Bernina 830 machine. We can see that up here. We can push up on the lid, and it actually just opens. There are some types of Kenmore machines that are similar, that on the inside of the sewing head where they just open, there's a latch you can push in on, and it'll actually pop this off for us. Okay, and we can look on top here, and we can inspect the gears, and there's actually a white gear that you're going to want to inspect every time. That's a stitch cam gear, and you can sight that gear and look at it as it turns to see if there's any cracks in that gear. It's very common. And this one is actually intact. It's in good shape. There's no cracks in it. We're looking at this one right here. So that's good to know. So we're going to go ahead and plug the machine in and make sure that there's no electrical issues. So let's make sure that the motor runs. Let's make sure that the machine runs real smooth. So plug this in, and we're going to fire it up. And we can see that the light turns on. That's good. And besides a little bit of a squeak, this machine's running really nicely actually. So that's good. We want to go ahead and inspect the bobbin area. Remember, before we do our initial test, we want to make sure there's no debris in here. We're actually going to put a little drop of oil in the hook. And if we look down in here, we can see that this actually has a lot of debris in it. It's got a lot of cotton buildup, a lot of material in there. So we want to clean that out before we put a drop of oil in the hook to make sure it's good to go. Bernina machines have a latch on the right-hand side of the foot that you push up on and then pull down on the foot to take it off, to take off that pressure foot. So let's take a closer look at that. Okay, so the idea is to use your pointer finger and your thumb to grab on, or your middle finger and your pointer finger, depending on how big your hand is, to go ahead and grab on, and then use your pointer finger to lift up on that latch. You see I'm lifting up on it, pulling down, and then turning it out sideways. Same thing when the foot goes on. You actually go on, middle finger, come on here, and then pull the latch down. You'll notice too that I have the pressure foot in the up position to take the pressure foot on and off. Okay, we're getting ready to perform the service regimen, so we're going to take that off, and then we're going to go ahead, drop the needle down, loosen that up, pop that out, because we're going to change the needle every time on a service. We have a new needle to test with, so we know our test is accurate. Okay, so with these old style Bernina machines, this free arm actually has a release on the inside of the throat right here where the bobbin area is. You press over on that and it comes off, and so you can remove the plate. It's a really nice feature because this machine, I can essentially access all of the serviceable parts without any tools for a basic service. Okay, so this is actually really phenomenal. Let's take a closer look. So on the inside of the throat, there's a latch right here. upper left-hand side. We're going to press in on that. It's spring-loaded, so it pops up and you can actually pull that off to reveal the whole free arm of the machine. Okay, and look at all that debris. We need to clean that off if we're going to get an accurate test. We don't want that debris present for our test to check for mechanical issues. So the initial cleaning for our test on this machine, because it's so open, we're going to approach this the same way as if the covers were off. And we're going to blow from one direction to the other, so we're not blowing debris into the machine. I like to blow in between the feed teeth, or the feed dogs as they're called, to get that debris that's been packed down in there out, get it blown out. Then we're going to take out the bobbin case. There's a little latch, and the bobbin case comes out while I'm pinching it, and we pull it out. Okay? Let's take a closer look at that. So we're actually going to use our pointer finger to grab onto the latch here, pinch it, and pull out. And we can see how there's a cutout in the top. That little arm, when it goes in, you can actually put it in slightly sideways if you need to, and then just twist it until it pops into place. And you'll see that the pin of the hook is flush with the bobbin case when it's in. There's the pin for the hook there. That's where the bobbin case goes on, and it goes on flush, and you'll know that it's in. So now we're going to take the hook out for cleaning. We're going to go ahead and press in on this release right here. You'll hear a click, and this is the race. This is the hook race, and we can see there's a lot of debris around the hook race we're going to clean off for our test. We're going to pinch the center pin of the hook, and it just comes right out. And look at all that debris in the race and the groove right there. We want to clean all of that out so that we get an accurate test and the hook works like it's supposed to. Okay? So with cleaning out hook races, sometimes the debris builds up in the hook race over time. So just blowing air into it doesn't quite get it out. And what we need to do is clean it a little bit more in there. So we're actually going to go ahead and take some tweezers and get a little piece of shop towel here. We'll rip a piece of that off, just like this here. I'm going to fold this over, and then we're going to clean it, because once we clean the race, then we'll oil it, we'll re-grease it. So we're going to put some, we're going to soak that little piece of shop towel, grab onto this, and then we're going to go ahead and clean that hook race, get all that crud out of there. Look at that. See all that debris? So just air, just blowing doesn't really get that out. So it's important that you go ahead and clean your hook race before the test, or else you're not going to get an accurate test. Look at that. Look at all that black stuff that's built up in there. It's probably never been cleaned over its 50-year, 60-year lifespan. So we want to make sure we're really cleaning out that hook race. And see how it's all blackened in there. And we got out all that debris. It's just a quick cleaning procedure we can do with these to make sure that it's all clean. And sometimes I just run those tweezers in there just to make sure we're getting it all out. You can even take your old needle and run the old needle along the race. And look at that, some debris fell out. We'll run this along this side of the race. Now our race is totally clean. I'll take another little ripped off piece of shop rag and just dry that off. Now what we're going to do is take our shop rag, double it over on itself, and I'm going to do the same thing with this removable race right here, the black race. We're just going to wipe down the inside of that with our little piece of rag, making sure that that's clean. And then we'll take the dry piece that we had, and then we'll dry that off. We'll wipe that down. Now we're going to take our hook right here so we can see that. And we're going to fold the shop towel over about 4 times, put the hook on there, and we're going to take a Tri-Flow aerosol lubricant. You got to shake it up, and we're going to spray this hook down just to clean it real quick, and then we'll just wipe that down. This is a quick thing we're doing. We're not taking a long time to spray the whole hook down, but we're cleaning it with Tri-Flow aerosol lubricant. Gives it a nice polish and makes it ready to test with a really accurate test as well. And I like to put the rag right into the hook like that, and then we turn it so it's all clean. Then we're going to go ahead and put the hook back in. You have to set the hook into the basket. The basket is what oscillates the hook. By oscillating, it means it turns by about half the circumference of the basket area to oscillate the hook to grab thread off the back of the needle. So it's an oscillating hook machine. It takes a push-in style bobbin. Oscillating hook machines take a push-in style bobbin. So basically what I like to do is turn this so it's like a cradle, so it's cup shaped. We're going to take the hook like this facing up and set it in the cradle. Just like that. It's going to fit right in there. And we can see how it goes back and forth in an oscillating shape. Let's take a closer look. You need to put a hook back in. Sometimes it helps to prop the machine up, or if you're making timing adjustments. So what I do is we take a screwdriver and we're going to prop the machine up, and we're going to set that screwdriver just underneath there like that. And so now the machine is propped up, so it's slightly at an angle but still in front of us. So now we're going to turn it so the basket is cupped, and then we're going to set the hook into the basket just like that. And then we can close this. You see how there's a pin on the left hand side. That pin on the left hand side is what clicks onto the leaf spring. So you want to push on the pin, and you'll hear a click, and push on it with a little bit of force. You can push on a little bit of force to hear the click so you know it's in place. And see that? See how it moves? We're good. Now, at the base of this hook, or this hook race, what you'll see is there's actually kind of a divot there. And what that is so oil can run into the race and then take the oil around the whole basket area. So all you have to do to oil these hooks, once they're clean, you still need to clean the area, is take your oiler and put a drop of oil down here, and the hook will naturally take the oil into the race when it turns. See that? So it's taking the oil in. All right, we're ready for our initial test. Okay, so we're going to do our initial test, and we're going to put a brand new needle in this machine. It's an 80-12 universal needle. We're using Schmetz needles, so a German good quality needle, so we can do our testing, get accurate results. We're going to put the pressure foot on, just like we talked about. And what we're going to do for testing purposes and also just for training is use a red thread in the bottom. And we're going to use a white thread on top, and we're going to look at balancing tensions and what that means exactly. You'll notice here that Berninas have a little hole drilled in the top of the bobbin case arm. That's for buttonholes and decorative stitches only. Threading the thread through that hole creates more tension on the bottom that pulls down for decorative stitches. The bobbin does not get threaded through that hole normally. What we do to thread the bobbin, this is called a push-in style bobbin, an oscillating hook bobbin case, or a 15 class bobbin case. The bobbin goes in with the thread coming off of the left hand side. If you're looking at the case like this, then the thread is going to pass into a slot on the side. You'll see that there's a slot for that thread to go into, and then you're going to pull it to the top where it's going to come into a leaf spring, and it's in place, right? So now we're good to go, and we can see it's pulling and it has tension. The key is that it's in that leaf spring right there, and if we look at it, it's actually turning in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and plug that in. Now, if you're going to pull your tail up and you don't want this big long strand of thread here, you're going to leave the thread dangling to the bottom of the door, the bobbin door, and clip it. Okay? And we can close it. And close that, close the top. We're going to thread the top of the machine. Okay? So, we're going to use a white thread for testing. Okay, so we've got some white 50 weight polyester thread here, some Mettler thread. We're going to put that on top, and we're going to thread the machine. We're going from our spool pin to our pre-tensioner, which is the tensioner behind here, through our tension disc. And remember, the tension disc, to be deactivated or open, the pressure foot needs to be up, and this disc will open so we can feel that the thread is loose. When it's down, you can pull on the thread and feel that there's tension. So we're going to thread around the check spring, which is down here, which is the check spring that checks up and down, and then through the take-up arm, through the needle bar guide. Then we're going to clip our thread at an angle so we have a point, and thread the eye of the needle, just like that from front to back. And remember, when we put the needle in, I put it in with the flat side to the back going all the way up, and then I tightened the screw down while I was holding it in place. Okay? Then we're going to go ahead and pull up our tail by taking one rotation, and we'll see that red tail from the bobbin pop up here. Take the thread like we're flossing, pass it underneath. Now we have our tails, or our two thread tails, coming out to the back. Okay? So let's take a closer look.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to take the thread in my left hand and then in my right hand so I have it nice and taut. And I'm going to go ahead and go on the back side of the machine here. There's a guide. And I'm going to go underneath the guide and pull it through. Okay? Then, holding the thread taut still to make it easy, I'm going to pass it through the tension disc on top. Okay, and then we're going to come down, and then we're going to go around the check spring, which is on the bottom here. And you'll see the check spring, it moves up and down to take slack out of the thread as a stitch is created. That's the check spring. Then we're going to go ahead and thread the take-up arm from right to left. So we go through the take-up arm, right to left. So I'll just do that one more time from the front. We'll go boom, right side, left side, and then down. And then we've got a needle bar guide that's open on the left-hand side. All I'm going to do is catch it on the left-hand side, and it's now in the guide. Then we're going to go ahead, cut the thread at an angle to point it, take that point, and pass it through the eye of the needle. I'm going to cut it one more time because it's split. And we'll thread that needle. Now we're going to put the thread underneath the foot. There's an opening in the foot that we're going to go ahead and put it in. We're going to pull up our bobbin thread by taking one stitch by hand in sewing motion, turning the hand wheel towards me, and we'll see the red thread comes up. Taking the thread like I'm flossing, I'll pass it underneath the foot to grab onto my tails and hold them to the back, so now we're ready to sew. Alright. So for our initial test, we're going to take a shop towel, and we're going to fold this shop towel over on itself so we have 3 layers of towel. We're going to put the 3 layers under the pressure foot, and now we're going to turn the zigzag up all the way. There's a zigzag selector here. We're going to go all the way to a 4. Now on this machine, on top of the machine, you're going to see that there's a stitch selector here to go 0 through 20 to select one of these 20 stitches. You have to have this selector on a 1 through 20. Otherwise, if it's on the zigzag, it will only do zigzagging and straight stitching. Okay, so we'll start out there, and then we're going to set our length, our width, the stitch width, how wide it's going to go, to a 4. And that's for how wide back and forth it goes. Then we will adjust our stitch length to a 2. We want to test it at a 2 because the range of 2 to 3 is a pretty normal range. So we're going to test it on a 2 to see. And we're also going to reverse part of the way to make sure that it reverses properly as well, as part of our initial test here. Okay. I like to take the foot pedal when I'm doing a test, and actually if the cord's long enough like this one, we're going to go ahead and put it on the floor so that we can use our foot to test the machine while we control the fabric. Okay? So let's see how it does. It's sewing pretty smoothly. Sounds really nice. So we're going to go ahead and bring the needle up all the way so that the threads are loose and they come out when we lift the pressure foot. We'll clip that. Let's take a look. So it's not missing any stitches on the zigzag all the way across. we can see that the stitch on the bottom and the zigzag looks the same as the stitch on top, but you can almost see the red poking through just a little bit. You can see a little bit of red coming through, which can be normal. But what we're going to do is I'm going to change the tensions on this so you can see the difference one way or the other. Anytime you balance tensions on a machine, you always want it to be on the standard factory setting. This machine has a plus and minus, and then a center mark for the standard factory setting. So I'll show you that a little bit closer. So if we make the adjustment up here, we can see we can go minus, or we can turn it up and go plus for a higher tension. And what the tension is doing with that is it's changing how much it's pinching the thread, either more or less, depending on this value here, this little disc up here. There's actually two discs and one in the middle, pushing together on the thread to create tension, which is changed by the spring tension that we're changing here by shifting this, okay? And you can actually see this on the bottom. When I turn this dial, it's making it looser. Now it's making it tighter. So that's good. All right. That's our upper tension adjustment. But when you balance tensions for the customer, we want it to be on the factory setting on the middle as best we can, and then we'll adjust a bobbin tension to make an adjustment to balance the stitch. So to make a bobbin case adjustment, we'll go ahead and take out our bobbin case, and we can see where the adjustment happens is right here on that little screw. And it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, okay? And it doesn't take much to change this. And we can see from our initial test how the stitch looks on the back and the front. I would consider this a balanced stitch. Because the threads contrast, you can see a little bit of the red in the needle hole where the needle punched through, but it's not really pulling up to the top. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what an unbalanced tension would look like. We're actually going to loosen this so the top tension, the white thread, pulls up and pulls the red thread to the top. Okay? I'll illustrate that. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot to change a tension value. I'm using a 00 screwdriver, flat blade, to go ahead and make this adjustment. So we're going to go ahead and make our adjustment. And I'm going to turn this. We're actually going to go one full revolution counterclockwise. So we'll go ahead and plug in our bobbin. And we're going to make a rotation, pull up our thread, pass it underneath. Okay, now we're going to do another test. 3 layers of shop towel, right, just like before, like a seam, how the machine would normally be used. Then we're going to run this. We can see a difference right away. Let's take a closer look. See how the bobbin thread comes up to the top. That means the lower thread is actually too loose because the top thread, this white thread, the upper tension. So we'll go ahead and we're going to do a full rotation. Counterclockwise means loose. And that is loose. See that? It won't even stand up on my hand when I pull up. It just comes out. That's too loose. But let's go ahead and test and see what that actually looks like. So when we have a situation where we can see the bobbin thread coming up to the top like this, we've intentionally changed the bobbin tension, but the standard upper tension up here is on its standard setting. What we know is that the bobbin tension is actually too loose, and so it's coming to the top, okay? We can look at the bottom and see the bobbin thread is right there, but the upper thread is pulling up the bottom thread, so it's too loose. So now what we're going to do is we'll reverse the adjustment so we can see the difference. So here's the screw. We're going to turn that screw in back to the setting it was at before. And before we could see when I picked up the bobbin case, when it was in my hand, it would not stand up. Now it will actually leave my hand. So for an oscillating bobbin, or a system where the hook turns back and forth like we see in the Berninas, the bobbin tension is usually generally tight enough that you can hold the bobbin in your hand and it will actually leave the hand and it won't drop. That's pretty normal. So let's go ahead and test that. Okay, and tension balancing is going to be within a certain range usually. So we want to get the tension to be in a certain range in general. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and pull up that bobbin thread. And we're going to test again. And we'll see the difference here. Now what we can see, because I have red thread in the bobbin and white thread on top, there's a little bit of thread, but see the difference from where we've tightened up our tension. And look at that, it still is looking very consistent on both sides. So that's really what we want it to look like. We want the stitch to tie in the middle of the fabric, like right in the middle of the fabric. With red thread, we might see a little bit of that where the hole from the needle pierced it. So this is balanced tension. This is what it looks like. Now this was when the bobbin thread was too loose, so I'm going to show you what happens when the bobbin thread is too tight. We're going to tighten up this bobbin thread. So it's overly tight, and you can see it doesn't even take a full rotation to really change the tension values of a bobbin case. Adjustments only happen usually by 5 or 10 minutes at a time to balance the tension. So what we'll see now is the difference here, where we see only the top thread on top. On the bottom we can see that the top thread, it's hard to see kind of, but that white thread is really pulling. We can see the top thread pulling down. So if we see top thread pulling down, that means the tension's too tight. So we want to go ahead and loosen it. And I'm going to set it back to normal. Now, the thing to keep in mind about balancing thread tensions, now we can see here it is pulling up a little bit of that red thread, so I'm just going to make it a little bit tighter. And we can see it's pulling down a little bit more. We're going to make it a little bit tighter. And I'm only doing about a 10-minute turn clockwise to tighten it up. And now the stitch is looking the same on the bottom as it is on top. Okay, now something to consider about Bernina machines, or most precision machines, is that the machine, when it's a precision machine like a Bernina, your stitch on the bottom, like the zigzag, will look pretty much the same on the bottom as it does on top. You may see a little bit of the bobbin thread if it's contrasting colors, but when you do your final sew out, you need to use the same color threads for your final sew out because it gives a better customer experience, okay? As long as the stitch is tying into the fabric on both sides with the Bernina machine, you're good to go, okay? On lower end machines like Singer's, Walmart Brother machines, Janome machines, machines that don't have as good a tolerances as these, or not as good a quality machine, you will see that in a zigzag, one side of the stitch on the bottom, the bottom thread comes over a little bit, okay? And that's normal on those machines. You'll never get a really good stitch quality like a Bernina where the stitch looks the same on the bottom as it does on top with a cheaper machine. So don't try to continue to balance tensions up or down with your bobbin case on a factory setting if it looks like it's just pulling on one side, but it's pretty much balanced for the most part. You're good to go. You don't have to overcomplicate this adjustment. This is not an adjustment to overcomplicate. You simply don't want it to look exaggerated like this, where the thread tensions look really bad, where it's really pulling up, or where you can see visibly that the thread tensions are pulling down too much because it's too tight. The bobbin case is too tight, okay? But the stitch is tying in the middle of the fabric in general is what we want. And your bobbin case adjustments will only be a little bit one way or the other way, okay? So it's kind of a general adjustment. You should not spend more than 1 or 2 minutes on this kind of adjustment. If you're going back and forth a lot, you need to ask for help from a higher level technician with more experience than you have so you know what you're doing, because if you're balancing tensions back and forth and you can't seem to get it right, there may actually be other problems with the machine that need to be identified and you shouldn't be working on it. So if you're doing tension adjustments, it should be a quick adjustment on the bobbin case one way or the other on the normal setting. If you're working on a machine that has a dial, you can set it to a 4 usually. If it's 1 through 9, you go to a 4 and that's in the middle, then you make your bobbin case adjustments, okay? So you want to be at the factory setting or the normal setting, then balance the tensions from there, all right? So we balanced our tensions, we got a nice looking stitch. I'm actually going to do the final sew out right now. We're going to go ahead and do our sew out because we're getting a very nice stitch, so we can go ahead and do that while the machine is stitching nicely. We're going to take a 15 class bobbin at our bench here with some white thread on it. We're going to match our threads. And remember, again, at the bench, the best thing to use is a 50 weight polyester thread. Okay, like I have a spool of Mettler thread here. And we're going to go ahead and, I have a empty 15 class bobbin. And we're going to go ahead and put that here. Now, let's say you have a bobbin that has a little bit of thread on it, but you need to wind a different color because you need to match your colors on the sew out or the sample that go with the machine. Don't use contrasting colors for your final sew out like we did for the testing, all right? Or like we did for balancing tensions. You're going to match your colors for the test. So you can take a screwdriver and put the bobbin on the screwdriver. You're going to put your thumb on the other side so it spins. And now we're going to go ahead, take the vacuum cleaner and turn it on. And we're going to suck that thread off. You want to see that? Now see how okay, so see how I actually closed the gap on the hose with my fingers to create more of a suction path that really sucked the thread in. Until I really did that, it really didn't pull it off all the way. But this is just a fast way we can unthread a bobbin if we need to go ahead and match our threads, okay? So it should be, that's just a really quick way so you don't have to sit there pulling thread off of your bobbin. With these kinds of bobbins, they usually have a slot in the middle. So you can poke the thread up through the slot. And you'll see when I did that, I actually took the thread and folded it on itself and twisted it so we can go ahead and put it up through there. Pull that through, put the bobbin on. Okay, and then we're going to push over to activate this. This machine also has a clutch. The clutch wheel back here, we're going to grip the hand wheel and then rotate this counterclockwise to loosen that in the middle. Okay? Now the whole machine should not run while I run it to wind a bobbin. Go ahead, stop for a second. So we're winding a bobbin here. For a sew out, you don't need to wind the bobbin a lot, so don't. Only wind it a little bit, okay? We don't need to waste a lot of our bench thread or wind up a bobbin unneedingly, you know, creating extra work for ourselves by winding too much thread. So we're going to go ahead and put the bobbin in. You'll see the threads coming off of the left-hand side. It's going into the bobbin case, okay? And then we're taking the thread and we're going through the tensioner up to the top. I'm going to pull it over, and I feel a click, and now we have tension. Okay? So we'll take this here, this guy up here. We can actually just hold the bobbin, push it into place, and we're going to see right here where the pin becomes flush. Okay? So we're ready to go. Now we're going to thread the top of the machine. So we're going to put spool pin to pre-tensioner guide, which is the guide on the back. And then we're going to go into the threading path of the machine, down and around where the check spring is. And if you look in there, you'll see the check spring. That's to take slack out of the thread as the take-up arm creates the lock stitch up on top up here. Okay? And the take-up arm is going to thread from right to left through this little slot. Then we're going to come down and go through our needle bar guide left to right. Okay? So one thing that's important to know about sewing machines is that the threading, the theoretical threading of a sewing machine is the same on every machine. I thread machines sometimes I've never seen in my life because I've threaded so many, because you're going from the spool pin, which is either horizontal or vertical. If it's horizontal, you got to use the right spool cap. The right size of the spool cap matters. If it's vertical like this, it needs the kind of spool that will actually turn and deliver, not a cone. Then you go to your pre-tensioner or your guide just before the actual tension disc. You're going to go through the tension disc with the pressure foot up. All machines need to have the pressure foot up so these discs are loose and disengaged. You go around your check spring. Sometimes the check spring is in the tensioner in some types of machines, so you can't see it like this one, but it's in there when you go around it, or you go through the tension. It's in a check spring to take slack out. Then you have a take-up arm, then you have a needle bar guide, or sometimes multiple guides going down to the needle bar, and then we're going to thread the needle. So when we thread the needle, we're going to cut it at an angle to make it pointed, and we're going to go through the eye of the needle. So we'll thread that up, and then I went under the foot, and I'm going to make one rotation by hand to bring the bobbin tail up to the top, and then I'm going to go ahead and make the thread like I'm flossing and pass it under the foot to grab my tails, just like that. Now I want to illustrate real quick what's happening with the sewing machine with the door open, just for your information, just so you know what's going on. We're going to take our sew out material and we're going to fold it in half to do our sew out long ways. And I'm going to go to a straight stitch by turning the stitch width to a 0. And I'm on the zigzag on top, okay? And we're going to make sure our stitch length is at a 2. All the test sewing is done pretty much on a 2. So we're going to put this under here with the edge of the foot on the fold of the fabric. And now I'm going to show you down here what happens, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and prop this up with a screwdriver on the bottom. So you can see the needle, when it penetrates the fabric, goes down, and then the hook catches the upper thread off of the needle, and it delivers the thread around the bobbin. That's the loop. Now the loop gets lifted, I'll point up here real quick, by the take-up arm. See how the take-up arm's down all the way? It's going to go ahead and pull up and pull this loop that's down here that we see down here. It's going to pull it up into the fabric to create a stitch. And then the material feeds. So the needle comes down, the hook grabs the loop, creates the loop. Now watch, it's going to feed the fabric, and that's what happens. That's loop lift. That's how a lock stitch is created. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do our sewing. So we're going to sew this in here. Doing a straight stitch, we're going to reverse in the middle. And as we get towards the end, we're going to reverse one more time to show that that's working. We're going to flip this around. That's a very nice looking stitch on the bottom, looking good on the top. All right, so now it's a good presentation for the customer. Remember, we want this to look good for them. And now we're going to go ahead and turn the width control all the way up. Or actually, we're going to go to a 2.5, and we're just going to do a zigzag. So you'll see here. And the zigzag looks the same on the bottom as it does on top. And that's what we want for the customer. And so now we're going to go to a full 4, and we're going to activate the mending stitch. So the mending stitch is stitch number 2 right here. We have to go to the selector that says 1 through 20 to go ahead and activate that. Now when we do this stitch, the needle bar is going to go back and forth while it takes stitches, so we're testing the needle bar position to show that it's hitting all of its needle positions. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and run one last stitch. We're going to do a decorative scallop stitch up here, number 6. This machine does not do a reverse cycle stitch, which basically means it doesn't do the kind of stitches where it'll go forward 2 stitches and back 1 stitch. So we're going to put a decorative stitch on here just to show that that's working great. With a satin stitch like this, we actually have to turn this to just below a 1, between a 0 and a 1, and then we have the width turned all the way up to a 4. And so we have a decorative stitch on here. And what we'll do is go ahead and cut this out. What we need is a sample for the customer and then a sample for our checklist. There's 2 documentations that we're going to have for these to make sure that we're documenting things properly. So we have a copy of our test and the customer gets a copy of the test as well with the checklist, okay? So we're going to set these off to the side. And now we're going to proceed with the service regimen. And go ahead and get this guy going. And luckily, what's really nice about mechanical machines is that when you service a mechanical machine, there's no electronic leads or cords to unplug, and you're not supposed, as a Tech 1, you're not going to do electronic service. Okay, you're going to do mechanical service, which doesn't involve that. So it's a lot simpler for you. You can do your test, and now we can go ahead and go forward with the service and oil the machine. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove the pressure foot, and what we're going to do is use our pointer finger to pull that down just like we showed before. And then I'm going to remove the needle just for now to get it out of the way. So we have that out of the way. And of course, it's always good to have your magnet tray nearby so that you can go ahead and put these parts, like your bobbin case, the needle, all inside of the magnet tray. Then we're going to go ahead and press the latch that I showed you before on the inside of the free arm right here. We're going to press that in, and you'll see how that spring loaded pops right off, just like that. Okay. Now we've already done some cleaning in here and blown it out, but we're going to go ahead and open it again and take the hook out, just like we did before. We're putting that in our tray as well to go ahead and clean this here. Okay, so we're going to pop the top. That you just push up like that to reveal the top of the machine. and then we can open the side of the machine to reveal the sewing head. So if you actually look at this machine, we've totally revealed all of the essential service areas of the machine with no tools or removing any screws. It's a pretty awesome hallmark of this older Bernina sewing machine. So now I'm going to show you oil points. So we start from the back here and we go over. So we're going to start with the bushing at the very far right hand side, next to the bushing on the right hand side of the counterweight. We're going to turn the wheel so the oil goes into the bushing. Then we have an eccentric here that runs the feed linkage. These forks right here, I'm going to oil those and then turn that. Then we have a gear over here. We have a gear driver. There's a metal gear on a nylon gear, and that's actually pretty dry, is what we're seeing there. So we're going to go ahead and put some Tri-Flow clear synthetic grease on that. This is a new kind of grease. It's synthetic. It's not lithium based like the older greases, so it won't get dry and turn into like a concrete. So we want to take some of that on our finger just like this. Okay, and we're going to run that onto the gear and turn that so the teeth get that grease. And any excess grease we're going to wipe off, and we're going to grab a shop rag and just wipe that off. Get that all wiped off there. And then we're going to run this here and take that rag and put it just up to the teeth to get off some of that excess. But there's still grease in the teeth of the gears, which is what we want. Okay, and I'm just going to put that rag on there to get the excess off. And that's what we want. So the gear's greased. That's a main drive gear too. This white gear is going down into the bottom of the machine and driving the rest of it. Okay, we're going to put a little bit more grease on this gear over here, and that's another stitch cam gear. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just put some on there, let the teeth pick up the grease, and I like to leave the machine plugged in and on so we can go ahead and run it, get that grease in place, wipe off the excess. So that's good. Now we're going to go ahead and oil through the fork right here, and that's for the stitch cam. This is an essential part of a Bernina machine over here, these 8 series. There's a fork, see that goes back and forth here? This needs to be oiled on the front here, and then on the back here, so that that fork can slide back and forth. That's really important actually, to generously oil that, because that fork kind of goes down into there on a bushing, and this will seize. Very frequently this will actually seize, and then the stitches won't work anymore. And then this seizing actually makes this gear over here not turn like it should, and the shaft has a worm drive gear that turns that and it'll crack that gear. So if you don't oil this fork right here, their gear over the long run can actually break right there. You'll see it crack. If it does, you can actually still get the part and we can repair that, and that's a more complex repair that you have to be a higher level technician for. But we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of grease on here. So we're just going to put a little bit of that there. And we're going to run the machine. To grease that up. So when greasing gears, always be very aware of your fingers and where they're going, and know what you're doing with it. So, you know, you can put some grease on there and run it if you want until you're comfortable with greasing it while it runs, like I just did. You know, you might get a little bit more experience first, but definitely don't put your finger in places like where the take-up arm is going or other places that can be a problem, all right, to grease those gears on top. Now we're going to go ahead and oil through any of the moving parts. So over here, there's a little bushing here that moves, on the edge of that gear there. We're going to go ahead, and we have a fork over here where the oiler tip is. Okay, we're going to oil that up. So that little guy moving on there has something to run on, some oil. Then this whole cam turns. There's a bushing behind here you want to oil so that cam can turn comfortably, and one up here where this wheel is turning. You'll see here on the other side of it where that bushing is. Can you see it? You gotta show it. this is the bushing here, and that's where I just oiled. So now as we go further over, I'm gonna oil right up to the main shaft here. There's a bushing there. And then we're gonna go just to the right of the counterweight over here. You can see where we're gonna drop some oil there. Now, if we look at especially older machines, the take-up crank, you'll actually see there's a hole in the bushing for an oiler to go, so we can go ahead and oil right into the bushing. On the opening, there's another hole there. And then there's another hole here. Those are oil points, and then there's actually one up inside of here as well. Okay? And then we'll run that so that oil works into those joints. Now on this side, if you look in there, you'll see where the needle bar is going up and down. We're gonna go ahead and oil the bottom of the needle bar. There's a bushing there. Then the top of the needle bar, there's actually another bushing over here. Okay? And you'll want to oil the top of the needle bar. Put a little bit of oil there. And then that oil will run on the bushing on the needle bar. It's always important at the end of the service to follow the checklist and go ahead and clear the oil from the needle bar and the pressure bar where there's excess oil, so the customer doesn't take the machine home, run it, and the oil drips down on the fabric. You have to absorb the residual oil in the top of the machine after oiling through, so they don't get a bad experience. You don't want the customer to have a bad experience at home when they use the machine. Okay, that's sounding really good already. So down here on the bottom, we're going to see there's a drive shaft here that's sliding in and out of these two bushings. So we're going to oil on one side of the bushing, and oil on this side of the bushing, and then oil on this side of the bushing, and then on this side here. So I've done 4 different oil points on either side of the bushing, running the shaft back and forth to get the oil in. There's also a little bushing right here, and then there's feed linkage that we're going to oil here, and then here it's actually rocking back and forth. Now over here you're going to see that underneath here there's a gear. You can see that gear. Okay, and what we're going to do is take a screwdriver. We're going to take a little bit of this grease right here, and we're going to go in here and we're going to apply the grease to the gear. The bottom of this shaft actually has a toothed gear on it. It's a pinion kind of gear. That's what that's called. It's like a pinion gear. And we're going to apply grease just underneath that. What's going to happen is it's going to rock back and the teeth are going to get the grease. Okay? So we've greased the hook gear. Just takes a little bit. Now we've got everything oiled up. The machine sounds great. So we're good to go. So now we're going to go ahead and close it all back up. Put the hook back in. We're going to do one final test. And then we're going to go ahead and clean the machine, and I'll discuss that. I wonder if Wade has more LED bulbs.
You want to get like a good idea of where the camera's at so you don't step in the way?
I'll try to kind of stand like to the side while I work on it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and change this light bulb out with an LED cluster. The older bulbs get really hot, and you can see what I did is I just popped this light bulb tool into the machine and twisted it, and it came out. This is called a bayonet bulb. It's very common. You can see this one is totally, it's not totally burned, but you can see where it's burning out. It's blackened, starting to go bad. We want to recommend a new one. It did turn on, but you see it had that really yellow kind of light. So we want to recommend an LED bulb. These are $19.99. We carry a good quality one. You can see all the clusters on the side. These are all LED clusters, these yellow guys. And then there's a bunch on top too to shine down. All right, now this is a multi-tool or a multi-bulb that has a pin on one side and then one that's lower on the other side. The purpose of that is so that you can fit these into different types of machines. In a scenario like this, where we just need the top piece, we grind off this one. So this is how we do it. We're going to turn the wheel on, and we're going to touch this to the side of the wheel, allowing the wheel to do the work for us. We don't have to press it on hard, we're just going to touch it. See, and that's ground flat. All right? We still have our bayonet on that side. So now, we can take our handy dandy bulb tool, and we're going to push this up in here. And actually, these are so skinny you can hold on to them, which is kind of nice. And you can twist it, and look at that. Amazingly brighter. Okay, you want to upsell customers on these because they don't get hot, they run forever, and they're super bright, a lot brighter. And this bulb is probably burning out very soon anyway. So it's $19.99. That's our price now. Sometimes the prices change. Whatever the price is that we have on the bulb marked, that's what you want to do. And it's almost like you've upgraded their old machine, so now they have modern lighting. They have modern LED lighting, so that's what we want. All right? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and clean the machine, and when you clean a mechanical machine, you can use your spraying cleaner, your Simple Green, a lot more generously. You do want to unplug the machine, okay? And we're going to get that cord out of the way. We're going to take the machine head with an all-metal machine like this. All of the electronics are basically in the motor, okay? So we can spray the front of the machine, the top of the machine, the side. In areas like this, you can see where there's dirt, like built into that crack right there. You take your shop rag and put it up to there, and then you can spray that and clean it out very easily just by spraying it. Okay, we can take a little driver too if we need to. We can push that along to really clean it up, getting all that dirt out of there. So that's good. And we're going to clean the machine, and we can spray it down. You never do this on a computerized machine, but you can on an all-mechanical machine, which actually makes it kind of easier to clean sometimes because you can clean the whole thing. You always want to clean the hand wheel really well because I've been handling the hand wheel after I touched grease and my hands are dirty. And you can even see some of this cleaner coming off of here, and it's like black. You know, it's dirty. This particular customer actually drew a threading path on her machine with a Sharpie. So there's some arrows on there telling her where to thread her machine, which is fine, that happens too. Sometimes the pressure feet are really dirty, like this has a bunch of dirt in the white area. The white area of the foot is actually to help you thread the needle so you can see the eye of the needle when you thread it. They put a white deal behind that. So we can actually just set the foot down on a rag and we can clean that off. Just like that. Make it a lot cleaner for the customer so they get a good experience when they get the machine back. Okay. And this rag is pretty saturated now. It's got a lot of dirt on it, so I'm going to switch to a newer rag or a cleaner rag. Okay, and then we're going to do the back of the machine. If there's another sticker on the machine from another company, we're going to take it off. Okay, we're going to peel that off. We're going to put our own sticker in the place of that. Wash off a little bit of that sticky. And back here we've got some other dirt that we'll just clean off here. People don't necessarily look at the back of their sewing machine all the time, but I still like to wipe the dirt off of the whole machine. Get it all cleaned off. Alright, so that's all cleaned down really good. And this has some sticky stuff here from a sticker that was on it. So the best solution for that is actually to take some oil or aerosol, like some WD-40 or some oil, and you put it on there and the oil takes that right off. You can see that that's totally gone now. Little trick for stickers and sticky stuff to get it off. Right. Now, with a vertical spool pin machine, you're always going to put a red felt on it. If there's old red felts, you're going to put new ones on it, okay, because they get worn out and they look funky. These actually serve a purpose on a vertical spool pin machine. They help the thread turn to deliver, so it turns a lot better. It doesn't rattle around and everything. So always put new felts on after you clean a machine with vertical spool pins. The customer will also see these. It's a good experience. It looks really nice for them. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and do a service sticker. So we're going to date the sticker. So we'll write the date on. It's better to use a Sharpie in most cases, because a Sharpie is just going to show a lot better. Okay. And then we're going to take the sticker so they can see our name and information, where to contact if they need more service or help with the machine, right there. Okay, just like that. And it's not on the front where it's really offensive or really obnoxious. It's still on the machine in the back, just over the serial number. It's a good place for the service sticker. All right, so we'll just do one final wipe down here. Wipe down some of the excess cleaner on the bench. Get that out of the way. Wipe the machine down around the base where some of that cleaner dripped down. We've got a nice clean Bernina machine going. Okay, we're going to put one of our sew outs here with it. We're going to fill out our checklist and we'll attach that sew out. Okay, so we're good to go on the cleaning on an all metal machine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just wipe the foot pedal down real quick. Just give it a quick spray back and forth, and then in the direction of the grooves of the foot pedal. Back and forth. You can see the cleaner's worked its way in there. So we're going to go back with the dry side of the rag now to clean that up. Just a quick cleaning job on the foot pedal. We don't have to detail a foot pedal because they're going to step on it anyway. But we do want to clean it up so they have a good experience with it. I like to wipe down the sides of it. Sometimes the bottoms of these have a lot of dirt and debris inside of them, so we'll wipe that down, clean it up. Then we're going to take their cord. This cord's actually really clean. A lot of times these cords are a lot dirtier, and we're going to spray cleaner into our rag. And then we're going to grab onto the cord like this, and we're going to pull it all the way through like this here to clean that cord off real nice. And look at that. You can see all the black debris that came off. This is a really clean cord. A lot of times the cord has a lot more debris that comes off of it, and I'm putting the cord in my hand like this and wrapping it all the way up to here. So we have a circle. We're going to take the circle and we're going to give it a twist. Not a crazy twist, just a little one. So then we can wrap the cord around itself here with the longer part. So we have it here. We're going to turn that loop over on itself. So the cord is all ready to go. Okay. So that way it doesn't get tangled around anything and it's in good shape. And the customer gets this back as a nice presentation in their case. So with cases like this is an older Bernina case, but it is a plastic case. You have plastic machine cases, you're gonna go ahead and spray them down. And we wanna clean the cases for the customers too, so they get a nice clean case back. Let's clean the handle too. We're gonna get a couple of rags, wipe down this case, using both hands so we can save time cleaning with 2 rags. And remember, time is everything at the bench. Don't waste time at the bench. Get things done thoroughly but efficiently. You don't want to waste time at your bench on needless things, but at the same time, you do have to do a good, thorough job, right? Make everything nice and clean. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and take our plastic polish here, and we're just going to put a light coating on the case. We're going to take our polishing gun and just in case there's any residual, take a dry rag just to get any of the residual kind of wet stuff out. Get it off of there from your cleaning fluid or anything. We've got a nice shiny red Bernina case. We'll go ahead and do our checklist and fill out an invoice. So this is a pretty common machine, and you'll see there's some things about doing a mechanical machine that you can do that you can't do on a computerized machine that you'll learn later on in Tech 2 training. But that's it for this machine on Tech 1. We have one more platform to cover.